I first saw him when he was across the road talking to my neighbor, Sam, at Sam's front door. I thought, well, he has to be a door-to-door salesman for another telecommunications company or another energy company or another duct cleaning company. You know how it goes. I was wrong. When he came to our door, he told me that his name was Craig. And he was collecting money for a charity that I did not recognize. He had no identification with him, and he had no literature to explain to me the nature of his charity. I respectfully told him that, no, I'm sorry, but I can't give you anything. Turning away, I heard him mutter, "You mean to say you can't even afford a toonie?" Charity. This is the third and final installment in that series of sermons I've shared with you entitled In Search Of. This morning we are in search of a deeper meaning of that word charity. The text is from the first chapter of Isaiah in the 17th chapter. Learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, and plead for the widow. When I was engaged in active ministry, I often attended workshops for various reasons. And it always annoyed me when I'd go to a workshop and the presenter would begin the session by saying, well, before we really get into this, we have to unpack the subject that's before us. And I always wondered, why do we have to spend time unpacking anything? Why can't we simply start talking about the subject that we've come here to discuss together? So I find it somewhat ironic that I stand before you this morning saying, before we can go any further in our exploration of that word charity, we have to unpack some stuff concerning it. When you hear the word charity, what comes to your mind? If you'd like to volunteer an answer, this would be the time to do it. What? Love. Love? What else? You realize I'm deaf, so you got to holler it out. Need. Giving? Okay, we'll settle for that. All right. When I think of charity, I think of giving money to a worthwhile organization that is called a charity. So I don't mind sharing with you that I support the World Wildlife Fund, the Ontario Humane Society, and War Amps. There's some other charities I give to from time to time, but I don't need to list them. You could put to my list your own list of charities that you support. But when I think of the word charity, another image comes to mind, and that's the image of someone seeking a handout. Walk through downtown London at any time of the day or evening, and before long you'll come across somebody who's holding out a hat or a Tim's cup, hoping that you'll be charitable and put some money in that receptacle. Or if you're driving your car and you come up to a major intersection, Fanshawe Road and Richmond Street is a familiar spot for this. You pull up by the traffic island, and there's a guy walking up and down holding a sign that says, "Please help." Again, when I was in active ministry, every week somebody would come into our church looking for some financial assistance. And their stories varied, and it would be the same stories that are told here, I am sure. Some of their requests for help were legitimate. And some we knew were as phony as a $3 bill. But we had early on made up our minds that we would not pass judgment on people. So if they asked for help, we did what we could for them. It's unfortunate that we have these experiences that we associate with charity because they tend to distort our idea of what charity is all about. In the Old Testament, the Hebrews and the Israelites, and later on the people that we came to know as the Jewish, put great emphasis on the worship of God. In the earliest days of their story, they worshiped God in God's sanctuary wherever it was set up, because God's sanctuary was a tent. It was called the tent of meeting. It was King David who decided that his legacy to the people of Israel would be building a temple in Jerusalem where God could be worshiped on a permanent basis. David did not get to do that, but his son Solomon built that temple. And when it was completed, it became the expectation that faithful Jews throughout Israel would make an annual pilgrimage, at least one annual pilgrimage, to worship in that temple. In time, as things evolved in their society, these same people came to believe that worship was all that God expected of them. It was the prophet Isaiah and others of his ilk who set them straight with some rather hard language. Again, from Isaiah, God says, all this worship stuff doesn't mean much to me. I'll tell you what means much to me. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rescue the oppressed. Defend the orphan. Plead for the widow. What God expects is charitable works. Now, the interesting thing is that in the Bible, at least in those Bibles that are translated directly from the original Hebrew and Greek manuscripts, you will not find the word charity. It doesn't appear in the Bible. What you will find are words like compassion, mercy, kindness, caring, love. In the Bible, those words are considered synonyms for charity. The work of the church is to do charity. The work of us as disciples is to be charitable. We are called by God, as the people of God, to seek justice for all people. We are called to offer kindness to all people, not just the people we like, and not just the people who look like us or have the same values, but all people. whether we like them or not, we're called to extend kindness to them. We're called to extend mercy and compassion to them. We are called to be charitable to them. There's two instances where we see charity at work. There's more, but I'm only citing two. Charity at work in the ministry of Jesus. The first instance involves two blind beggars who are sitting by the side of the road. When they hear that Jesus of Nazareth is passing by, they call out to him, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on us." And Matthew tells us that Jesus, moved with compassion, touched their eyes and restored their sight. Jesus was charitable towards them. The second instance is from one of Jesus' parables. It's called the parable of the unforgiving servant. But we're focusing on the first part of that story. The real punch comes in the second part, which you're not going to get today. But in the first part of the story, in the lead up, the story is about a lord or master who has slaves. One of his slaves approaches him and says, "Lord, I owe you a great deal of money, but I can't afford to give it back." And Jesus says, that Lord took pity on the slave. Another word for charity in the Bible, to have pity. He took pity on that slave and forgave him the debt. Diana Butler Bass, in her book entitled Grounded, cites John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, and Wesley's conviction that the world would be a better place if people developed and cultivated within themselves what he called holy habits. Three of his holy habits were showing mercy to others, loving others, and showing kindness to others. Wesley taught that the best place to learn those holy habits and others that he listed was in the home. Not in the church, but in the home. In the home was the place where holy habits were taught and practiced. And once a person lived with the discipline of practicing holy habits in all circumstances, they were then free to enter society, which reaped the benefit of becoming more charitable as a society because of the way in which people were living. So, Ruth asked me, where's the catch in this sermon? And this is where it is. We need to consult a note here. This is what happens when you don't do this every Sunday. The fortunate thing is the necessary page is here. Yeah, yes. In 1984, Richard Saul Wooman was deeply involved in the technological innovations that were taking place in California's Silicon Valley. Wooman became an absolute genius in this line of work. And he wanted to acknowledge others who developed at the genius level as well. So he created what he called the TED Award. Technological Excellence and Development is what it stood for. And the TED Award was given to anyone in the field of technological research who had made a major impact. So it was a peer-elected kind of award. In 2000, as time passed, the TED Award was expanded to include anybody who had made a significant difference in the world. Martin Luther King was awarded the TED Award posthumously. Mother Teresa was granted the TED Award. In 2008, the TED Award went to Karen Armstrong, who is a theological teacher of the highest regard. And she got her award because of the work she did in developing what came to be called the Charter for Compassion. And the people who sign on to the Charter believe, among other things, that a compassionate world is a peaceful world. That a compassionate world is possible, where every man, woman, and child treats others as they wish to be treated, with dignity, equity, and respect. We believe that all human beings are born with the capacity for compassion, and that it must be cultivated for human beings to survive and thrive. The last time I checked, 49 countries plus Canada have signed on to the Charter for Compassion. Within those countries, there are untold numbers of communities, from the smallest village to the largest city, that have also signed the Charter for Compassion. They signed it as a commitment to make their communities more charitable places. Places where those who have no one to care for them are cared for. Places where justice is available to all. Places where those who are going without are cared for. There was a time when true charity, compassion, kindness, and love were the hallmarks of churches regardless of their denominations. Some of you may be old enough to remember your mothers in the 1930s packing bales of clothing for the victims of the Dust Bowl on the Canadian prairies. These bales would be loaded onto freight cars and shipped out. My mother-in-law, at 93 years of age, still occasionally will ask, "So when are the ladies packing the next bale?" Well, they don't pack bales anymore, but that's a memory that she has. You may recall a time where churches routinely put on benefits for somebody who had gone through a disaster of some kind, whether it was a flood or a fire or a tragedy. You may recall a time when the Women's Missionary Society devoted all of its energy to helping the less fortunate people of the world. With the advent of social programs, government-based social programs, such as welfare and guaranteed annual incomes and all the other stuff that goes with it, churches gradually lost sight that they are called by God to be charitable. Fortunately, a great reversal is starting to take place. And in part, that reversal is occurring right here. I am aware that you partner with a number of other churches in Strathroy to provide a hospitality meal once a week for 80 to 100 people. You host that meal once a month. That all started because a handful of you got together and read a book that prompted you to take action. I am aware that you support the Mission and Service Fund with your regular offerings. But last week, what a delight to share in your, I'll get this wrong, in your coffee and biscuit, I think it was a bun, same difference. Money was for Mission and Service. I suspect that there are other charitable activities going on in this congregation of which I am not aware. I am aware of another church that runs periodic community kitchens out of its facility. The purpose of that is to educate people on how they can prepare nutritious but affordable meals. They prepare a meal and take the food home and serve it up to their families. This same church established a community garden last year, a garden that it hopes to expand this year. Again, to help people to learn once again how to grow their own food and how a fresh tomato tastes radically different to a hothouse tomato. Churches are rediscovering that they are called to do more than just worship. They are called to put love into action. They are called to show mercy, to offer kindness, to be compassionate, to be charitable. This series all started with a quotation from Don Curl's song made famous by Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Have faith, hope, and charity. That's the way to live successfully. It is absolutely true. Amen. So let it be.